So in between the formal properties, how we describe things, and this idea of like meaning is perception. So it's how we kind of understand things. It's not meaning, but how we understand how things are made. And perception is a really beautiful thing. I've talked about it a little bit in class. This idea of the school of psychology called Gestalt is something that we lean on very heavily in a graphic design. It's a way to create things in a way that humans understand. And so I'm going to take this opportunity to show you how to do a few things in Illustrator. So some very basic things. This is a very basic introduction to this drawing program. Like I said, there's no requirement in the learning outcomes that we use digital tools, but it's a fundamental part of what we do. So I'm going to take the time to show you some of the basics, and this is very basic. We're going to go through it very slowly. I'm going to show you from the very beginning how to set up your file and how to work with a few basic shapes in order to achieve some of the illustrations that we've gone over in class. So again, I've started on this in class. I have some markers in here so you can jump ahead to wherever we left off. If you want to come back to a part that you didn't understand, you want to see it again, you're welcome to do that. And we'll be jumping back and forth and looking at doing some things manually and some things on the computer throughout the course. So this is Illustrator. If Illustrator is not installed on your computer, your course comes with a free license. It's a great deal. There's incredible programs that come here. You can install all the ones that you want here. So you can go ahead and look here under graphic design. You should find Illustrator. If it's not installed, it'll give you the option to install it here. If it's installed, you can open it right from here. And so you can just click open and it'll open like this. Yours may look a little bit different, and I'll show you why it looks different in a minute. But once you're in here, there are some good tutorials you can follow here if you do want to learn some more. Otherwise, just go ahead and click on, and if you do want to get started at the very beginning in order to not fall behind in the tutorial, feel free to stop the tutorial at any time and jump in and look at one of these other tutorials that come for free with the application. When you're ready to go ahead and click on New File. And here we're not going to worry too much about sizes. I just want to draw your attention to a few things about this interface. Here there's some preset sizes you can choose. This orientation is important. Almost everything that we do on the screen is going to be horizontal. That's how we see it best. So I recommend using horizontal artboards. Here you can see one thing that's interesting, and that is these units. Picas is a really beautiful way to work. It's a different unit. I'm not requiring that you learn to work with Picas. I just want to demonstrate one thing, is all of our paper sizes come in inches. That's something that we're stuck with here in North America. So if I click here to inches, it's not going to update it immediately, but here you can see all of them immediately, but here you can see that a letter size is 8.5 by 11 inches. That's what we're stuck with. One of the challenges that comes with inches when you start working in small sizes is you end up working with these horrible decimals. Whereas if you work in Picas, because the units are smaller, you end up with way less of these decimal points. Picas are a little bit different than inches, but similar in many ways. They divide evenly into inches and they work really nice with typography. But here you can see when I switch over here to inches, end up with these kind of nasty decimals, and they only get worse from there on in. But here, Picas is a much more flexible way of working. Illustrator allows you to work in both simultaneously. I'll show you how you can do that. And I had to learn how to use Picas. It took me a really long time when I was learning graphic design totally manually. So let's go ahead and open a letter size page. You can see we're setting the size here, and we're setting the number of artboards. So artboards, pages, It's how Illustrator describes pages as artboards. And we're going to start with one, but we're going to create multiple. So I'm going to show you how to create multiple artboards. I'm going to go ahead and create this. And you can see here that Illustrator created a page for us. This here in the center is the artboard, as I promised. Your workspace may not look exactly the same as this. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and click on here where it says Workspace and change this to Essentials. And you're going to want to do this twice. You're going to want to go here and go Reset Essentials. And what that allows you to do is it allows us to start from the same place so that our workspaces look the same. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back here, click on this icon here, and I'm going to open a couple of tools here to help you follow along. Click on here again and go New Workspace. And you're going to call it GD101. And you'll see once in a while that I drop a letter, and this is because my keyboard is a little bit broken. I've cleaned it a few times, but it still is sticky. Yeah, so what you'll see that happens quite a bit is you'll see some keyboard shortcuts appear here. Every time that I hit one of my keyboard keys, it'll appear here. And that includes the command key will appear there and the option key. So if you do want to get good at Illustrator, it's important that you learn a few of the basic keyboard shortcuts. It'll make you a lot more proficient. It'll make it seem like it's actually worth the effort to learn how to use it. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and now we should have the same workspace. Almost all of Illustrator has a lot of panels. You can see here, you can open up all these panels here. Almost all that panel information will appear here in the Properties palette. It appears depending, this panel here will change depending on the tool that you choose. So here is the selection tool, the direct selection tool. There's a couple of pen tools and the shape tools. We're going to pretty much limit ourselves to those for these first few exercises. So most of what you'll do is with these ones, but you can see that when I choose the selection tool, that this panel changes, and when you draw things on the artboard, that panel will change as well. We're going to actually get rid of this libraries one, so you can pull panels out simply by clicking and dragging on the tab and then closing it. You're not going to work with libraries anytime soon in this course, so we don't need it. You're going to want to have this layers palette here, your properties palette, and we're going to go ahead and do that again. New workspace and go GD101, and here you'll get a little warning that says the name already exists. Click OK to overwrite and just go OK, and now we have the same workspace, you and I. What I'd like to do is I would like to take a minute to show you some really basic housekeeping rules. So when you're working with digital files, it's very important that your file naming and your folder structure is very consistent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and I'm going to actually create a folder for this class for me. So here I have all my working folders set up by the semester, and here I'm going to set up a new one, and I already have one set up here, and this is for GD 101. So I'm going to go ahead and double click in there, and I'm going to show you how I laid this out. So here I have it set up as I have a term project. I have a folder for term project and a folder for journal visual analysis, and here I have a folder for form storming. So here is where I put my Indigenous assignment, Indigenous acknowledgement, and as you know, we have 3 of those journal of visual analysis, and I've started placing some of the images. These are older ones that I drew, and I placed them in here, and I'm going to update those with the ones that I drew the other day. all my images will go in there. And it's important that you keep these folders really well organized and your files organized inside, and use a good naming convention. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new folder for this one, and I'm just going to call it exercises. So I'm going to go File, New Folder, and if you're working on Windows, sorry, I can't help you. I don't know what a lot of these, how these things are done on PC anymore, but I'm going to call this exercises. Exercises. Okay. This one is going to be, so I'm going to save into this folder here. So I'm going to go ahead and go File, Save As. Here you might see when you first do a save is that Illustrator is going to try and get you to save on the cloud. So this is saving to the Creative Cloud. I want to encourage you to try avoiding that if you don't have to, because once you've saved it there, it's easy to save another copy on your local drive, but it's hard to do that and remove the one off the cloud, and that space is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where Adobe is going to start charging you. And unless you have a lot of money to throw around, you probably want to avoid that as much as possible, having these subscriptions. So this is a little trick you can do on the Mac. If you have a file or a folder in a Finder window, this is the Finder. You can see here I'm in the Finder. You can actually take those and drag them into one of these dialog boxes, and this dialog box will go to that folder. So here you can see where I am. Okay, when you're saving working files, you're going to save them as Adobe Illustrator files. Here you can see you have the option to save as Illustrator or PDF. When you're uploading to your Miro board, you're going to need to save as a PDF. At the end of this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to save as an Adobe PDF. So here, I'm going to call this, we are on week 4, so I'm going to call it 4, and I'm going to call this Gestalt. That's essentially what we're going to be covering is these principles of Gestalt. So all these exercises that we're doing are you manually rendering out Gestalt ideas using Adobe Illustrator. Go ahead and save, and the default, all the default here is okay. Okay, so the other thing I want you to always remember to do is to put a label on your artboards. Okay, so sorry, we got to be a little bit more careful here. So I'm going to go back here to this folder here, and then sorry, I made a mistake here. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to this folder, and let this be a lesson to you to be more careful with your file naming. I want you to make sure you name your file using our naming convention, which is your name. So that's my name. Use your name, don't call it Andrew. Andrew, so who, when, so this is 22. This is my way of naming the semester, and it is exercise 4, Gestalt, and it's GD 101. So again, who, when, what, and where. So as you, okay. So that's where you're gonna name your files. Okay, so I'm gonna just double click on this to open it again in Illustrator, and here you can see in the tab that this name has been updated. Okay, the other thing I want you to do is make sure that you name your artboards. So here we have one artboard, and in order to do that, the easiest way to do it is to open your artboards palette. So go ahead and click on Window, Artboards to open that. And what you're going to do is you're going to take this Artboards tab and you're going to click on it and drag it all the way to the bottom of this panel here, so it appears at the very bottom. And then just close the asset export. And again, go ahead and say New workspace, GD 101. Again, ignore the warning and click OK. And now ours should look the same. And when you have more than one artboard, you can move between them by clicking on this space here. You'll find this happens a lot in Illustrator, that you might want to try and get to this artboard, so you double click here. Oh, you double click on the name, right? You might go, oh, I need to get to artboard 1. You double click on artboard 1 and it's allowing you to rename it. This is actually great because it's a very easy way to rename your artboards. But if you're trying to navigate between them, you want to make sure you click here to navigate and click on the name to rename it. And we're going to call this first one Proximity. Proximity. Okay, so we looked here at what the first few tools were here. I just introduced them to you. The selection tool, this is for selecting objects. This one is for selecting parts of objects. And as you go through this, you'll see that a few things on here. As you scrub over this, it'll give you these pop-ups, which are going to get annoying very quickly. So I'll show you later how to close those. But it does give you a little preview of what this is for. So this is for selecting entire objects. The selection tool is for selecting entire objects. The direct selection tool is for selecting and appointing and adjusting anchor points. So points along the path. That's a thing that Ellen Lupton called just a dot in space. No weight. It's just a mathematical dot. It has no attributes applied to it. And I introduced this pen tool to you and the shape tool. You can notice some of these tools have a little triangle in the corner. If you click and hold on those, you'll see that there's more tools underneath. And now you start to realize that not only does Illustrator have a lot of panels, it has a lot of tools. So this can take a lot of time to get used to. We're not going to use that many, especially at the beginning of the course. We're going to keep it to just a few tools. At the very bottom here, you'll see this magnifying glass. This is very useful because it allows you to zoom in. And again, this is a very important concept in Illustrator, is that these tools allow you to, they're complex tools. They're not just a one-click tool. They actually allow you to change them by using your keyboard keys. So here I'm holding the Option key down. You can see this changes to a negative. That allows you to zoom out. So zoom in, zoom out. Another way to be able to get back to seeing your whole artboard is just to double click on the 1. So number 1, that'll take you back to a full screen. It'll fill up the screen. There's also ways to zoom in and out here under view. It's kind of an expected place to put those. Zoom in and out. And you can also see your zoom level here. So there's lots of different ways to do the same thing. This is one of the things that makes Illustrator powerful, but also a lot to learn. So don't worry about it. We're going to go through, I'm going to show you little bits at a time so you don't have to learn everything all at once. Okay, so we named our artboard. I've shown you some of the navigation ideas. One more navigation idea is this hand tool. So you may find that you have zoomed in quite a bit on your artboard and you know the artboard is over here. How do you get there? Well, you can come over here to get the hand tool. And that'll allow you to click and drag. It's not moving the page. It is actually moving your view on the artboard. So it's actually moving where this kind of window is on the entire artboard. So that's an important concept to kind of understand, wrap your head around, is that when we move this, we're not actually moving the artboard, we're moving our view in that space. This can be a little bit slow. So going all the way over here to grab that tool is slow, especially if you're in the middle of drawing something and you just want to move your view over a little bit. So very important shortcut is the spacebar key. If I hold the spacebar key, I will temporarily switch over to this hand tool. So just try this. Try switching to the hand tool, just click, and then as soon as I let go of the spacebar, it's going to go back to the tool I was using before. So learn to use the spacebar to get your hand to drag back and forth. This is very efficient. Okay, so enough talk. Let's go ahead and try drawing some shapes. So what I want you to start with is actually go here to this rectangle tool and click and hold and drag down to the ellipse tool. And so this tool draws ellipses. So you can go ahead and try drawing one of these. Go ahead and draw one like this. Draw an ellipse. You can see here when you get to a certain point in here, some magenta lines will appear. So those mean that you're no longer just drawing an ellipse, you're drawing a special kind of ellipse, which is a circle. So it can be a little bit hard to get that very accurately. So what Illustrator does is it makes it easier for us to get that. Because if I hold my Shift key down while I'm drawing that ellipse, it will constrain it to a circle. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and draw a circle like this. And you've drawn a circle. If your circle doesn't look like this, if it has a fill in it, it has a different color stroke, I want you to change it so that it's the same, so we both have the same one. And what I want is, I want to draw just a black circle, no stroke, but with the black fill. So here you can see, if nothing is selected here, I don't get the option to change the color because there's nothing that can be colored. But if I take my selection tool and I click on here, you can see that when this is selected, this property palette changes to allow me to set the properties of this, the attributes of this shape. If I click anywhere else where there isn't a shape, it deselects it, and that means that I'm no longer applying any attributes. So let's go ahead and select this, and let's change this to give it a fill of black and a stroke of none. So this is one thing that will appear in all your color palettes. At the very top is this none, and that clears any color attribute from that. So in Illustrator, we're applying a color to both the line around the shape, which aligns with what Lepton called it, right? A shape is a plane that is defined by a line, right? So we've already established that. And here we have a plane that is defined by a line, and it is a circle. So I can go ahead and change this to another unit size, another size if I want. So if I deselect somewhere, this gives me the opportunity to change my units of measure. And for this exercise, picas is going to be the easiest way to work. But if you do have this set 2 inches, one of the beautiful things about Illustrator, and it really is a beautiful thing, is that Illustrator does not force you to work only in the units that you have set in the file. I can actually go in here. So make sure I've selected this with the selection tool. I can go here and I can change this to 1p, and that'll change the width to 1 pica. And again, it'll transform that into inches, so I just hit Command Z to undo. But what you can see that happened there when I did that, I went 1p and it just changed the width, but I want to retain the circle. So the way to do that using these dialog boxes is to click on this thing here, which is called that maintains the width and the height proportion, so it constrains it. So if I click on that and now I hit 1p, it's going to set them both to 1p. So I have this nice little circle right here in the middle. So I am zooming by pinching and squeezing on my trackpad. For those of you who are working with on a Mac laptop, you may actually at this point fall in love with your trackpad, because it does make it very easy to do some of these things that do take longer to do with a mouse. There is a gesture with a mouse that you can use as well. So the reason why I zoomed in is because of this. If I double click here and I use my selection tool to click on here, what may happen here is that it might get hard to grab this circle and move it. I just did it, but sometimes you'll be like, you keep grabbing one of these anchor points, one of these handles. So what this is Illustrator allows us to change the size of objects. So when we have the selection tool selected, we can actually change the size of an object manually by clicking on these handles. And again, if I want to constrain it, I just hold the shift key down and that allows me to change the size. But in this case, I don't want to do that. I just want to move it. I don't want to constrain it. I want to move it. And so with the selection tool chosen, sometimes I need to zoom in a little bit so I can grab it. And so what I want you to do is, I want you to take this dot that you put on the page and just click and drag it across. And you can see here that, again, those magenta guides are appearing. Those are called smart guides. And those tell me if I am constraining the angle that I'm moving this on. So I'm starting here, I'm dragging across. It constrains it to this angle. I have the same vertical, and doesn't give me, there's no smart guide for 45 degrees, but again, just like with resizing and drawing these shapes, if you hold the shift key down like this, if you hold the shift key down, it will constrain it for you. So it doesn't matter where you move your mouse, it will move it on the horizontal, on a horizontal axis. So move, click and drag, hold the shift key down, it will constrain it onto that angle. Okay, now I'm going to show you something very advanced, because now you're going to be using two keyboard keys while you're moving. And that is, you're going to click, drag, constrain the angle, and copy it at the same time. So this is what makes Illustrator and programs like it powerful, is that the tools are complicated. And this relates to a concept in design which is called, Teslar's law. It's called Teslar's law, or sometimes it's called Teslar's law, usually called Teslar's law, but it's the conservation of complexity. So the idea is that in design, things can only be reduced in complexity to a certain point. And beyond that, all you do is transfer the complexity somewhere else. So in order for us to get a tool that does these complicated things, Illustrator would have to have like 5 tools that do the same thing. Or you combine the keyboard. So much better to combine the keyboard. So I'm clicking and dragging across, and as you can see, when I hold the Option key down, so I want you to make sure you try this, you gotta master this, the cursor changes. If I let go of the Option key, you can see that the cursor is a single arrow. With this press down, it's a double. So the only thing you have to remember is to release your mouse before you release the keyboard keys. So release your mouse, then the keyboard, and that way you get this duplicated shape. So we're going to do this many times. So you get lots of practice doing this. But what I want you to do now is I actually want you to do this very beautiful, important idea in Illustrator, which is called transform again. So we just transformed the shape. We made a copy of it along a constrained axis. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Object, Transform, Transform again, and this makes another one. Going to go to Object, Transform, Transform again, and here you can see this can become very repetitive, going up to the menu and over again, going to Transform again. Transform again is a very important function. This is a very good keyboard shortcut to memorize, which is Command D. Command D. So Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D gives you multiple dots right across the page, and now you can see this kind of power of Illustrator in allowing you to create multiple objects. So I'm just going to undo this, go all the way back, and this time I want to count them. So I'm going to go, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I want you to do 10 of these dots across the top. And now I want you to do a new kind of selection. So far we've been selecting by clicking on it with our cursor. But now I want you to select all of these, and you do that by clicking. So hold your mouse button down and drag across. And you can see how this creates this marquee around it, and that'll select all of those dots there. That gives you a selection of 10 dots. And we're going to do the same thing with these 10. We have them selected. So I'm just going to click on any of these dots, and I'm going to drag down. And again, I'm holding the Shift key down to constrain the angle and the Option key to make a copy, and just approximately the same distance. And that gives us a copy of those dots. So now you have 10 dots horizontal and 2 rows. And we can do the same thing. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we have 10 dots across and 10 dots down. So you can see how this relates to the diagram that I showed you in class. And what this is it's the law of proximity. So because all of these dots are the same distance from each other, it gives us the impression that they belong together. So this is an important concept in Gestalt theory, which is, that when we see elements that are in the same proximity to each other, we associate them with each other, we understand that they belong together. And one thing that creates this proximity is this margin around the page. Because I've left this generous space around here, that negative space, that clear space around this object makes those feel like they belong together. So I'm gonna, give you practice again with this click and drag Option Shift with the keyboard. And again, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna select all of these and click on any of them and drag it across. Again, hold the Shift key down and the Option key, let go of the mouse first. And here we have another group of 10 by 10 dots. So what you can do is you can take some of these dots, doesn't matter how many, just take a group of them, click and drag them like this. And you can see how right away we understand this because it's this complex set of shapes. We have 100 dots here across. We understand that these belong together, these belong together, and these belong together. This is what we do as humans. So far as I know, this is a human way of understanding things. And when I look at indigenous art, I see the same idea. I'm not saying, I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not saying that everybody sees this the same way, but it seems to me that way. That as humans, we tend to understand that when things are in proximity to each other, they belong together. I'm going to go ahead and and I want you to do one more of these. It's not going to fit. I think this is good enough for the first one. So go ahead and save it. Last thing I want you to do is introduce you to one more tool, which is the type tool. And I'm not going to be too picky about how you do this right now, but later in the course I will be. And that is, I just want you to put a label on here. So go ahead and take the text tool and approximately, somewhere in between your dots and the top of the page, just click. And you are welcome to use whatever typeface you want, so long as it's a very simple serif or sans serif. And we're going to get into what those are later in the course. But basically, anything that looks fancy, do not use. So this is a serif, and this is a sans serif. Any of those are okay. Anything that looks like this or like this, you may not use in this course. You may only use a serif or a sans serif, a straightforward typeface. And we'll be going over the reasons for that. But for now, just make sure that you use a very simple typeface, especially for your labels. So any titles or labels. One of my favorites to use, because it's also available on the web, is PT. It's called PT. So it's PT is designed by for IBM. It's a pretty solid serif and sans serif family of typefaces, and it's available on both the web and in Illustrator. So you can use it in both places. So PT sans regular, 12 point should be okay for this. And I want you, so once you've drawn this, you may have done something else with this. If you accidentally clicked and drag, instead of just clicking, you end up with a text box. The result is the same. Just kind of position it evenly in this top margin area. If it ends up in the wrong place, all you need to do is take your selection tool, click and drag, and you can see how the smart guides help you align it. And I want you to call this first one proximity. Go ahead and save it. And that's enough for now. Go down here to the artboards and click on this hamburger icon, duplicate artboard, and spacebar. Again, we're not moving the artboards, we're moving the viewfinder. This second one you're going to call Similarity. Similarity. So we're going to just do what we did before. We're going to take the selection tool, click and drag across, and delete. So for this one, it really is about how we understand when things look the same, we understand that they belong together. So for this one, I want you to use your rectangle tool. And again, we're just going to make small shapes, about 1 pica. So I'm going to go ahead and click like this. And again, I'm holding my shift key down when I drag. Draw the square larger, just so you can get a little bit of practice. So holding the shift key down turns it into a square. If I let go of the shift key, I'm going to get a rectangle. So practice drawing with the shift key. Let's draw a square. One other thing that you might find interesting when you're using these drawing tools is that, yes, holding the shift key down constrains it, like we've seen. If I hold the option key, it draws from the center. So this is really useful, especially when working with circles. For now, let's just go ahead and draw from here. So again, the option key, shift key are incredibly important for expanding the control that you have over these tools. And really, you can experiment with it when you're drawing. You don't have to worry too much about getting it wrong. Command Z is very close on the keyboard. You can undo anything. Command Shift Z redoes it. It's very easy to use. I want to resize this so it's 1 pica. So again, I want this link selected in my properties palette. If your object is not selected, just go ahead and get the selection tool and click in the middle. Anywhere here will select the whole thing. Okay, so when I want to change the size of this using this tool palette here. And again, I want to constrain the width and the height. One thing you see at the very beginning is to set the reference point. It's an important idea because, like holding the option key down when you draw this sets where the transformation happens from. So this time I want to do it from the top left corner. And so you can see you can click on any of these points here in the set the reference point, and that'll change the size from that point. By default, it's set to the center, but it'll do whichever one that you've chosen last. That is what it will appear the next time. So if you're wondering why this thing is not sizing from the center, take a look at the reference point, and you might remember, oh yeah, I set that previously to the top left. The top left, and I want this to be 1p. And that'll give us a nice small little square. So I'm doing this just so you get a chance to practice this again. So again, click and drag. So if you just click and drag, it'll move it. And if that magenta line is appearing, you can align it to a horizontal line. But if your cursor moves down a little bit, you'll see that it's just no longer aligned anymore. So holding your shift key down, make sure that it aligns every time. And again, option key, it's going to make a copy. So go ahead and do that, make a copy. And this time what I want you to do is what we did last time, Command D. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to do the same thing going down. So I'm going to click and drag across and go ahead and shift and just approximately. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we have something very similar, right? To what we had before, to proximity, all these objects. But here you can see if you look at both of these, there is the proximity that unites these ones and these ones, but you also get this feeling that these ones belong together. And it's, again, we're working with simple shapes. And some of you, this may feel like, okay, Andrew, this is just stupid simple. Yes, it is. But it's also, it's the only way that we can really understand these concepts is by simplifying it. Because as soon as you start working with more complex shapes, it gets hard to understand what is going on. So we start with simple ones, and this helps us understand it better. So moving forward, we can start working with more complex shapes. Again, I hope that I get through most of this in class with you, but I've recorded it so that you can jump forward and come back to this later if it's not clear. So what I want you to do now is to illustrate this point that similar things belong together. I want you to select some of these. And probably the easiest way to do it is just, like they do in a lot of the books. You'll see these diagrams appear quite a bit on the web if you type in Gestalt. And what I'm doing here is I'm holding my Shift key down. So this is another way to select. If you choose one, you can actually draw a marquee. But the other thing you can do is, okay, well, let's just do it the easy way first. Let's do one of these and drag it all the way down. I want to change the size of all these shapes, but I want to change their size so that they resize right in the same place. So in order to do that, and I'm very confused why Illustrator has these two really important functions hidden way up here under the object menu. But get used to the object menu, transform, transform each. Last time we've been looking at transform again, Command D. Transform each is below it. And what that does is it transforms each using its own reference point and its own dimensions. There's a very cool thing that I'll show you later, which is a random function. But for now, let's just resize these squares so they're all half the size. So 50 and 50. And I wish, and if you don't get a preview here, just have to click on this preview button at the bottom. You can see here that we've chosen the reference point. If I change this, you can see how that changes. Just do it from the center. And you can see you can move it as well. Let's not move it. Let's just look at changing the scale for now. So if you change the scale, these are 50% of the size. I'm going to click OK. And here you can see right away that these appear to belong together because they're similar. And, like birds of a feather. I think there's lots of maybe there's lots of kind of collective noun ideas in there, but because these are the same size, they appear to belong together. So we're going to do this again, and you can see how it would be nice if we could select all the other rows, and there's a way. So again, I started to show you this and I backed off. What we do in Illustrator is we can select individual shapes like this, one by one. But sometimes you might want to select these two. That's great. But if you want to select this one and this one, the way to do it is you select this one, hold your Shift key down, and select that one. Hold your Shift key down and select this one. Shift key down and select this one. And this might, you might start thinking, Andrew, you're giving me a lot of stuff right now. These ideas are repeated over and over again in Illustrator, so you'll start to get the sense for the Option key has a certain function, the Shift key has another one. And again, those two keys, super important. I always keep my thumb on the Command key, and so it's really close to the Option key, and my social finger on the Shift key. So let's just see how this works when we're doing a marquee selection. So I can select all of these, and you can do the same. Now if I hold my Shift key down, I can select this second column, and a third one, and a fourth one. And here you see I end up with multiple selections, every other column. And I'm going to go ahead here, and I'm going to go transform each. And because I just did that, it's selected. And I'm going to click OK. So this illustrates the idea that start to get the sense for the ones that are similar belong together. And you know what? You get a sense that these belong together, but you also get a sense that these belong together as well. And here we have a pattern happening, so that has its own dynamic. So let's take a look at what happens if this is not a pattern, how it starts to feel, how these things belong together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to choose these because I should have copied it first. So if you're watching this and you want to undo and go back, you're welcome to. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, good practice. And just select some of these. So whichever ones you want. Doesn't matter so much. And again, I'm holding my shift key down. Just so long as it's just a small quantity of them. I've selected this one here. You can see these ones, and these ones. Go back to my object menu, transform each. And here you can really start to get the sense about how this is the way that we understand things. When things are similar, we tend to think that they belong together. Yeah, that should be good enough for this one. I'm going to go ahead and move these down just so it looks a little bit better. If you want to try something else with this, you're totally welcome to. If you want to try drawing different shapes, feel free to do that. But I just want to keep this fairly simple for now. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm just going to show you 2 more of these Gestalt ideas. The next one is the idea of closure. It's a very beautiful idea. And then the last one that we'll do is continuity. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on my artboard to rename it. So this one is Similarity. Click on the hamburger icon and duplicate artboards. And I'm going to call this one Closure. I'm going to delete these. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at 2 different ways to look at this. And they're both pretty beautiful. One is what it does to a single object. So I'm going to go ahead and get you to grab the ellipse tool. And we're just going to create another circle like this. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do something new. We are going to make it so it has no fill and a thick stroke. So we're going to start by going over here. So again, Illustrator lets you do things in many different ways, and it all depends on the context. And sometimes I'd want to go over here, but here what I want to do is I actually want to switch these 2. And what that does, you saw right away that it changed it. This is a very quick way to get rid of the fill and add a stroke. And then I want to have a nice thick stroke. Let's give it 10 points. Let's make it even more. Let's make it 20 points. So, okay, one thing that you're going to see that happens here is, and this may happen to you, you may take your drawing tool and you think, okay, I'm going to click and drag, but instead you click. And if you click and don't drag, this dialog box comes in. Don't worry about it for now. This is a way to enter the size of something manually. For now, let's just click and drag. You can just hit cancel on there. So want to look for a minute at what happens if we hide part of this line, because the idea behind closure is that when we see an object, we tend to complete it. So there's a certain amount you can take away, and we will no longer do that. But up to a certain point, if it's a simple shape, or even if it's a complex shape, if it's a shape that we understand and part of it is missing, we will complete it. And we do this all the time. So if we see, a car out the window and it's hidden by part of the window frame, we don't think, oh, there's part of a car. We understand it as a whole car. And again, this may seem like we're oversimplifying things, but it's a very important concept. We don't have to show the whole thing for you don't have to show the whole thing for people to understand what's there. We tend to complete things. So if we look at this circle here, what we can do is we can take the rectangle tool, and we can actually draw a rectangle over top. And here you can see if I want to do a square. Okay, let's draw from this corner here. So I'm clicking and dragging down, holding the shift key down. And here, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hide it for now. I'm not going to do anything complex with this. I'm going to switch the fill and the stroke, and I'm going to change the fill to white. I'm going to deselect it. And here you can see is that even though part of the circle is missing, we understand that this could be a circle. We aren't confused by it. It's not like we see 3 arcs. We kind of see what's the simplest thing. We kind of we finish off the shape. This becomes even more evident if the shape over top is visible. So if we switch this over to red, now we really do understand that there is a circle behind the square. We don't have to see the whole thing. This becomes even more interesting when we have multiple objects. So let's go ahead and resize this, about half the size, but let's keep the stroke nice and thick. So what do we do here? We had a 20-point stroke. Let's give this a 20-point fill. So we have one circle here. Okay, I'm going to do something. It's going to feel a little bit complicated, but we're going to do a transformation. So 2 tools below your rectangle tool, you'll see this thing called the rotation tool. And again, this is one of those tools that has a triangle below it. So if you don't see that rotation tool there, it could be hidden under one of these other ones. So go ahead and grab the rotation tool. What I want you to do is go just a little bit below this circle. A little bit below the circle here. And this time you're going to hold the Option key down when you click. And what I want you to do is, I want to show this, I talked about how in Illustrator, you can enter whatever units you want. These little dialog boxes are incredibly powerful. And one thing it allows you to do is it allows you to enter an equation. So I want to rotate this. I want to create 2 more of them, but I want to rotate them evenly around this center point. And so, as you know, if I rotated it all the way around, that would be 360 degrees. So that would bring it all the way back to the beginning. If I wanted to go halfway around the circle, I could just divide it by 2, and that'll bring it halfway around the circle. But if I want to do it a third of the way, I just divide it by 3. And then I go copy. And then, again, transform again will give me 3 circles. So that gives you like a little triangle there. And it's important, here, think about what other Gestalt idea is appearing here, which is proximity. Because these are together, we think they belong together. And because they're similar, we think they belong together. So there's a few things happening here, again, at a very basic level. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag this down. And I want to drag it so it's approximately in the center between all these shapes. You're not going to get it exactly there, but you'll get it close. So now we have 3 circles with 1 in between. And here you can see if we go to our layers palette, we can see where those are. So the layers palette shows us the breakdown of where all these shapes are. And you can see where this one is, you can see where this one is, you can see where this one is. So what I'm going to do, and this is not going to do the thing that we expect, but we will be able to fix it by using the layers palette. So here we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're going to flip the fill and the stroke, and we are going to give this a fill of white. And here you can see, yes, the law of closure works. We start to understand that this is a circle and part of it is hidden, but there's something far more beautiful here that I want to illustrate with this particular one. So go ahead and select the center one, go to your layers palette, and you can see that it is not on top. So there's a few ways we can fix that. One is we can just click on here in the layers palette and drag it to the top. The other thing we can do is we can right click on here and go arrange, bring to front. So a couple of ways you can rearrange things, and you can see right away that there is the law of closure is working here, that we understand this. Even if we didn't know how it was drawn, we understand this to be a circle, even though we only see just hints of it. And we understand that these ones are hidden behind the white one. Again, it's not, it needs some massaging for it to be perfect, but it's that idea that we understand it. It is helpful if this is exactly the same size. So let's give this a white stroke of 20 points, so it's the same size as the black ones. So that's the law of closure. Pretty sure they call it laws, but anyways, it's a principle, or it's an idea of Gestalt. Okay, go ahead and save your work. Click and drag across to move your view, and let's create one more artboard. So let's make sure we rename this one to closure, and click on the hamburger and go duplicate artboards. And this last one we are going to call continuity. Continuity. Go ahead and save it. I'm going to leave the square this time. So I'm going to click across here and select them all. And I'm going to do the inverse that I showed you before with the shift tool. So I'm going to hold the shift tool down. I'm going to hold the shift key down while I click with the selection tool, and that deselects the square. Hit delete. So I'm going to create this new kind of special shape here with this square. And I'm going to just get you to increase the size till it's about 4 inches in size. Nice and big, but not too big. I want to be able to see around it. And I'm going to get you to copy it and go to edit and paste in front. So again, this is the way that Illustrator arranges. You can always see it by looking inside the layers palette. You can see we have 2 shapes, one on top of each other. I want you to select the top one, take your selection tool, and you're going to scale it down. Again, you're holding the shift key down and the option key to constrain it, and make it about half the size of the large one. So again, now you have 2 objects. You can select them by clicking on the far right of this palette. Again, if you double click here, you can rename it. Here you can hide them and show them by clicking on these little eyeballs, and this is how you can lock them. But what we want to do is we want to select both of these and go back to our properties palette, and we're going to go all the way down here to where it says Pathfinder. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a Pathfinder function which combines shapes together. This is a fairly advanced concept, and so again, this is the last one we're going to do. This is the last kind of idea that I'm going to introduce in this tutorial. You're just going to click on this one here, which does minus front. So it's going to take the one that's on top, and it's going to remove that from the bottom one. So go ahead and click. And it kind of looks like it put a white square in the center, but this is a special kind of object in Illustrator which is called a compound shape. It is one shape, and what it is this is a transparent hole in the center. And I'm going to use this to illustrate, or I should say you're going to use this to illustrate the concept of continuity, where again, it's similar to closure, but it has more to do with lines that appear and reappear in different spaces. So the idea of continuity is how things end up linking up together and they form one single shape. We don't understand them as separate shapes. So So we're going to do two of these. One is going to be with this red square. Let's make this a little bit smaller. And let's go ahead and go back to this shape tool, click and hold, and grab the line segment tool. And what I want you to do is I want you to draw a line behind this one here. So I'm just going to hold on here a minute. So put me on pause and see if you can figure out how to draw a line behind this square. Okay. Hopefully you were able to figure that out. I'll show you how to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw it from the center. So I'm holding my Option key down. The angle isn't so important, but I do want you to get used to using the Shift key to constrain angles. It's a very useful function. It really expands the power of all the drawing tools in Illustrator. We're going to give this a stroke of black, and I'm going to go ahead and make it nice and thick again, just to illustrate the point. What you can do here too as well is you can look a little bit at how Illustrator handles strokes. Illustrator is very powerful for handling strokes. So you can do dash lines, and let's make this a 20-point dash. Let's make it actually quite a bit more. Let's make a 60-point dash with a 10-point gap. So it's a nice thick line. Illustrator allows you to control where these dashes and lines start and end, which you can see is very useful here because you want to avoid this. You want to avoid it touching there because it kind of breaks the illusion. So you have to be very controlled. And you know what, working with basic shapes allows you to do that. It allows you to really control things. And later when you get to more complex shapes, you kind of know, yeah, that doesn't work. If, I have these line of hedgehogs that are running behind this window and it looks a little bit odd, it's not clear, like make sure that it's overlapping. That makes it a lot clearer. Okay, so here we have a square, compound shape and a stroke on top. I'm going to take the selection tool and I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go arrange, send to back. If you used the layer palette to do that, you may have ended up with two shapes that are much closer together. Here you can see by saying arrange, send to back, it moved it all the way to the bottom of the layer. So all of these shapes are now in between the two that are related to each other in the layers palette. This is a little bit messy. It's better to keep them close. So a couple of ways you can do that. One is, yes, I could do it like that. So I can move it all the way to the bottom. And then I can just select these and go right click, group. And you can see here now I have a group that has the two shapes together. And of course, if you did this by using the layer palette and just dragging it behind, that is fine too. Just as long as you keep things organized, both spatially, so inside this artboard space here, you want everything divided nicely into artboards. This is a very simple exercise. You're going to do more complex ones. Keep your spaces organized, name things properly, name your artboards. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So keep it organized spatially, but also keep it organized in layers. Okay, I want you to select these two. It doesn't matter if it's a group or not. So click and drag. You're holding the Option key down as you drag to make a copy. In order for these two not to interfere with each other, actually, let's just leave it like this and see what happens. I'm going to go ahead. If you group them, what you'll find, so Command G groups, is how do you just select one of them? Well, I'm going to show you two ways. One is to avoid, you panicking at some point in the future, because what happens when we've made a group in Illustrator is that you can see here, you can actually go in and expand the group and select individual items. But another thing you can do too is if you double click on a group, then you go inside the group and you're editing in this mode that's called isolation mode. This can freak you out. I know, the first time it happened to me, I'm like, what? When Illustrator added this feature, I'm like, what is happening? How did this happen? How do I get out of here? How do I fix it? I didn't know. But So what happens is, all you have to do to get out of it is click on this thing here, and that lets you get out. But it's actually very useful, because if you have these grouped, and you just want to change the color of this, which is what I want you to do, then isolation mode is very useful. You can see here that I can't actually select anything here. Again, I can get out this way. I can also get out by double-clicking anywhere, and it lets me out of here. Anyways, let's go ahead and just select the compound shape, the window shape, and let's change this to white. So here, we understand that this line is a continuous line. So this idea of continuity is important, because when something has a direction, you see this a lot with a horizon line. You'll have a horizon line, and in between it, you might be in Manitoba, and you're looking across the horizon. You can see forever all the way around, except there's a grain silo, or there's a hog barn, or there's a something else, some sort of agricultural, massive industrial warehouse breaking up the horizon. You don't think, oh man, there's not only is the earth flat, but the horizon is broken. You don't think that. We understand that that line is connected. I'm looking out my window and I see a wharf going across along the river. The line of the wharf is broken up by tugboats. I don't think that it's multiple wharfs. I actually, the wharf could be broken behind one of the tugboats. I naturally perceive that to be one solid wharf. So it's an important idea in Illustrator. So I think 4 basic ideas, we just looked at them really quickly. I also gave you a bit of an introduction to Illustrator. If you want to learn more about Illustrator, I'll be showing you more things throughout the course. Make sure you do some of the tutorials. I don't have time to dig really, really deep into Illustrator in this course, but I do want to give you the opportunity to try some of these things in Illustrator, because it's an important tool to use in graphic design. So thanks for watching, and let me know, give me some comments and feedback about how this went, and how you like using Illustrator, and anything else you like a tutorial for how to do, let me know. So go ahead and save this. Oh, before I let you go, one last thing. I have to show you how to create a PDF. So for now, we've been doing save as, and you can see here that you've been saving as an Adobe Illustrator file. When you go to submit it, so if you ever submit a PDF in my class, a file, you're almost always going to submit a PDF, not an Illustrator file. Here you can see up here, the tab, it says the name of the file .ai. These are not, almost never, I can't imagine why you would submit an Illustrator file to me in GD 101. I just don't want to see it. It's hard for me to look at. It takes a lot of extra time, and things can actually, because it's not encapsulated, because fonts and stuff are floating around in images, it doesn't gather everything together and give me one file that I can look at. So don't submit AI files. I want you to submit PDFs. Also, when you go onto Miro, you can place a PDF on Miro. You can't place an AI file. Miro takes all kinds of file formats. It will take a PDF, not an AI file. And that's because it's a working file. It's not for sharing, it's for working on your computer. So save these ones on your local drive. Make sure you use the file structure that I showed you. And when you go to create a PDF, don't choose save as, choose save a copy. This is important because if you have not saved, you will lose the work that you did, because you're going to save as a PDF, and PDFs don't have all the same information in them as an AI file. So this is going to save a copy. What I want you to do is go to the bottom and change this to PDF. So you're going to see you want 2 files with the same file name. The only thing you want different is the extension. One thing that you're going to notice is at the end of here, Illustrator has added the word copy. So you can go ahead and delete that, because that's just so you don't save over the old AI file with a new one. That's why Illustrator does it, but you don't actually need it for this exercise. So you're going to save it as a PDF. You can save all the artboards. You can see that PDF Illustrator allows you to save just some of the artboards. You're going to save them all. Go ahead and click Save. At this point, you're going to want to optimize this. There is no images in this, so you don't have to worry about it too much. But you can deselect Preserve Illustrator Editing Capabilities. That will almost always reduce the size of your file. And under Compression, when there's images in here, you're going to want to make sure that you average down sampling to JPEG. And you do that for color bitmaps, grayscale bitmaps, and monochrome bitmaps, which aren't supported by JPEG. But 150 dpi or PPI is sufficient. So you can save all of those, and this is good as a zip. So go ahead and save. And you can see here that you still have the Illustrator file open. And what you can do is you can actually go ahead now and go to Miro. So here's my Miro board. It's my Miro board here. And drag it over here so you can see it. I'm going to hide everything else. And I'm going to open up my Finder. And here you can see in my Finder, nicely organized. I know exactly where everything is under exercises. I have a PDF and an AI. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this PDF and drag it over into my Miro board. So Illustrator supports this beautifully, supports PDF beautifully, but you can see here that it's only showing you one. You can click through these like this by clicking back and forth. But the other amazing thing that Miro does is it'll actually let you expand the whole PDF. So you can go ahead and click on that, extract all the pages, extract, and there you end up with all of your artboards, and you can go ahead and make frames for them. Create frame, create frame, create frame, and create frame. And with these ones, you could probably make it transparent, and that way you don't have to worry about recoloring all of these or moving them out of the way. It'll actually just allow you to click back and forth. So no color. I think previously with other exercises I've had you make your frames white. In this one, so we call this exercise, what do we call this? Exercise 4. Exercise 4, Gestalt, and 1, proximity. And it's going to feel like you're doing a lot of, writing the same word over and over again. That's actually going to help you memorize what these are. They're not complicated, but memorizing them, these are really beautiful. So these are some of my favorite ideas in graphic design, is these kind of perceptual things. It's not the meaning of the words. I'm just pasting. I copied this. I went Command C, copy, and I can just paste it every time I select the name. So this is closure. So this doesn't affect meaning. Again, this is like in between the principles and meaning. It's Gestalt, is how we perceive things, so how we kind of understand it to be built and structured and organized. And continuity. This list is not definitive, so different graphic designers will tell you that symmetry is one of them, or Ellen Lepton does that too. She includes simplicity as one of them, symmetry as another. There's this other one, which is this interesting idea, which is a law of common fate, which is really beautiful too. But we just did 4 here. And again, when you have your boards organized, it's actually really easy to find what you're looking for in Miro. Just like when you organize things on in your file folder, here you can see all of the Gestalt ideas are nicely laid out and organized in here.